Chapter 6 Buying Slaves. Based on basic knowledge of the etherealium realm that he bought in the system. The arcane continent is a land of magic and knowledge, inhabited by powerful magicians. Basic knowledge of the etherealium realm. Basic knowledge that everyone knows in etherealium realm. Price 100. The most notable feature of the arcane continent is its magical energy, which permeates the very air and earth. It is said that the ley lines of magic converge there, making the continent a hub of mystical power. The magicians who live here are able to tap into this energy, using it to cast spells and perform feats beyond the capabilities of ordinary mages and mortals. The cities and towns of the arcane continent are bustling centers of magical learning and discovery. The great libraries and academies of the magicians are located here, as well as powerful guilds and orders dedicated to the study and practice of magic. The streets are lined with shops selling magical artifacts and ingredients, and the air is alive with the hum of spells being cast. Outside the cities, the continent is a wild and dangerous place, inhabited by all manner of magical creatures and strange phenomena. Dragon-like creatures soar through the skies, while giants and other monsters roam the hills and forests. There are also many hidden places of power, where the ley lines of magic converge to create pockets of dimension filled with magical energy. Despite the dangers, the arcane continent is a place of great wisdom and enlightenment. The magicians who dwell here are renowned for their knowledge and wisdom and are respected throughout the world for their mastery of the arcane arts. For those who seek to understand the mysteries of magic and the secrets of the universe, there is no better place than the arcane continent. On the other hand, the continent he was in was called the Cursed Continent or the Battlefield of Gods. The Cursed Continent is a desolate land that bears the scars of a cataclysmic battle between powerful deities. Once a thriving and prosperous realm, it has been almost stripped of its magical energy. The once lush forests and vibrant meadows have withered and turned into gnarled wastelands. The rivers and lakes, once teeming with life and magical energy, have become stagnant and lifeless. The absence of magical energy has taken its toll on the inhabitants of the continent. The inhabitant generation was often untalented and devoid of any aptitude for magic. It is said that any attempts to channel or collect faith within the cursed continent are met with failure, making it a land of godless where almost no one believes in God. Travelers who come to the cursed continent from other lands do so with a singular purpose, to seek out any remnants of the divine power that once flowed freely through the land. Despite the harsh conditions, the allure of the cursed continent's history and the potential treasures that lie buried beneath its magicless land draw adventurers from all corners of the world. Many believe that artifacts and relics of the ancient gods still remain hidden within the ruins and craters, waiting to be discovered by those with the courage to seek them out. A week later, Maximus' carriage entered the imperial city. The city was bustling with people and carriages, and the buildings were adorned with intricate carvings and colorful banners. The streets were wide and clean, with well-dressed men and women walking leisurely. The sound of musicians and performers filled the air, adding to the festive atmosphere. Maximus leaned out of his carriage window, taking in the sights and sounds of the city. He could see the imposing castle of the king in the distance, and the grand marketplace where vendors were selling all sorts of goods. Maximus arrived at the luxurious accommodation reserved for the people invited by the king. He was greeted by a butler as he stepped into the grand lobby. Inside was a grand foyer with marble floors and ornate chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. The butler led him to his suite with a warm smile and handed him a key. The bed in his room was draped in silk sheets, and there was even a jacuzzi in the corner of the room. After arranging accommodations for the guards and finding out the event was scheduled for 2 days later, he strolled down the streets of the imperial city, admiring the architecture of the buildings and the bustling crowds of people. As he headed towards the market district, where most of the shops in the capital were located, he walked into the slave shop. It tends to be located in more affluent areas, which is why they are not found in his territory. Many people perceived his territory to be too impoverished to afford such services. The shop was filled with people of all ages, some with sad expressions on their faces while others seemed to be resigned to their fate. He approached the counter and a well-dressed salesperson greeted him with a smile. "Welcome, sir. How may I assist you?" "I'm just looking," Maximus said, trying to keep his tone neutral. "Then let me do an introduction, sir. We have a wide variety available, from housekeeping to personal assistants to gardeners. We even have tutors and nannies for children." Maximus nodded, scanning the rows of people standing on display. He couldn't help but feel a little discomfort at the thought of owning someone, but he knew that in this world, it was common practice. His eyes were drawn to a pair of women whose looks were the same. Despite their slightly unkempt appearance and ugly scar on their face, their body was a sight to behold, exuding grace with their long hair flowing. Their eyes seemed to sparkle with an inner light, drawing him in. "Who are they?" He felt curious about them and turned to the salesperson, asking about their identity. "They were caught assassinating a great noble and were sentenced to a lifetime enslavement," the salesperson replied. Maximus's curiosity was piqued, and he gestured for the shopkeeper to bring them over. The shopkeeper nodded and called the twins to approach Maximus. As the twins walked towards him, Maximus couldn't help but feel awed by their striking beauty. Their features were delicate, yet fierce, and their movements were fluid, almost like a dance. He could tell that they came from a proud and affluent background, which had sadly fallen from grace. Name: Luna Silvermane. Strength: Tier 1 Official Knight. Potential: Rank 2 Uncommon. Fit: 75-94. Name: Livia Silvermane. Strength: Tier 1 Official Knight. Potential: Rank 2 Uncommon. Fit: 75-94. After carefully observing their status panel for a while, he determined that both of them used to have an impressive fit value of 94. He also noticed that both of them possessed the strength of Official Knight. For the ugly scars, he can take care of that easily. Restoration Salve: this salve is used to restore damaged skin tissue and promote healthy skin growth. It can be used on scars, burns, and other skin injuries. Price 100. Pleased with his choice, Maximus turned to the shopkeeper and inquired about the cost of hiring the twin beast girls. "Excuse me, how much would it be for the two of them?" he asked. The shopkeeper carefully examined the two before responding. "For the pair of them, the cost would be 1,000 gold coins. I understand it may seem costly, but they come from a noble background and despite their appearance, had the strength of an official knight. Moreover, I can guarantee that they are worth every penny." Maximus hesitated for a moment, considering the cost. But he was drawn to the beauty of the two. "Very well, I'll take them." Despite the high cost, Maximus was satisfied with his decision to purchase the twin girls. He knew that the gold points generated by them being his wives would cover the cost in just a few months. The number of gold points generated depended on the strength of the individual, with Tier 0 generating 1 gold point, Tier 1 generating 10 gold points, Tier 2 generating 100 gold points, and so on. He had already spent 1,000 gold coins on this trip, and while he wanted to hire more slaves, his budget did not allow for it. He planned to visit again in the future when he had more funds available. The shopkeeper smiled and began to fill out the necessary paperwork. As Maximus waited, the two girls approached him, looking shy and nervous. "Hello," he said gently, trying to put them at ease. "I'm Maximus. I'll be your new master." Chapter 7: Selling Wine. 2 days later. Maximus entering the grand hall of the imperial palace. He noticed the room was massive, with high ceilings adorned with intricate gold and silver designs. The walls were covered in rich tapestries depicting battles and victories of the empire. Walking through the hall with nobles and dignitaries, each dressed in their finest attire. Some were engaged in conversations, while others were enjoying the sumptuous food and wine. Suddenly, a trumpet blared, and everyone fell silent. A herald stepped forward and announced, "Presenting His Excellency, Count Maximus of House Shadowcrest." Maximus strode forward, feeling everyone's attention on him. He kept his head held high and his back straight, showing his pride and confidence. Maximus scanned the crowd and noticed his father's friends. As he approached them, he could feel their eyes on him, scrutinizing and judging him. He walked towards them as they offered their condolences. One of his father's old friends, Lord Marcus, stepped forward and said, "Maximus, I am sorry for your loss. Your father was a great man, and he was merely unlucky to be missed by the cult. If there's anything we can do to help you in this difficult time, please don't hesitate to ask." Maximus nodded solemnly, grateful for the kind words. "Thank you, Lord Marcus. I appreciate your support." Another one of his father's friends, Lady Diana, came forward and placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Your father was a friend to all of us, and we mourn his passing. If you ever need someone to help, please know that we are here for you." Maximus forced a small smile, touched by their words. "Thank you, Lady Diana. It relieves me to know that my father has such good friends. Maximus sat beside Lady Diana on his left and Lord Marcus on his right, taking a deep breath to steady himself for the opportunity that they presented. Lord Marcus, Lady Diana, I do need your assistance. Recently created a new wine that I believe would be a valuable addition to your estate's collection. Lord Marcus stroked his beard thoughtfully. And what makes your wine so special, Maximus? Maximus smiled, discreetly pulling a bottle from his bag of holdings. It's made from a rare grape that I have cultivated myself, with a unique blend of herbs and spices. It has a rich, full-bodied flavor that I believe will appeal to your discerning taste. Especially since it was made with the barrel of infusion, he secretly thought. The barrel of infusion, a large barrel with a pocket of space that can infuse and blend the wine with magical energy. Price 100. Lady Diana leaned forward holding the bottle of wine as she smelled it, her eyes sparkling with interest. I must say, Maximus, you had a knack for creating exceptional wines. If every wine is this quality, I have no doubt it will be a success. Maximus nodded eagerly. Thank you, Lady Diana. I have poured my heart and soul into this wine, and I believe it has the potential to become one of the finest in the land. Lord Marcus raised a skeptical eyebrow. And pray to tell, what is the cost of this fine wine? Maximus hesitated for a moment, then fixed the lord with a steely gaze. I understand your concern. This fine wine will only cost 10 gold coins a bottle. I will have my men deliver it through your door if you bought some. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. There was a tense silence in the room for a moment as Lord Marcus considered Maximus's offer. Finally he nodded slowly. Very well, Maximus. I am willing to take a chance on your wine. Let us discuss the details after the banquet. Maximus grinned, relief flooding through him. He knew he had recently thought of what to export for a while and decide to export wine as it doesn't cost much and are luxurious item for the noble. With the support of Lady Diana and Lord Marcus, he was sure that his wine would become a legend in time. The banquet continued, and Maximus found himself engaged in various conversations with different people. He learned about various things happening around the empire when he was living in seclusion. He also met new acquaintances. The air was filled with the aroma of delicious food and the sound of music played by the court musicians. Some other nobles invited other ladies to dance whenever they saw someone they liked. He also looked around to see if there were potential wives, but to his disappointment, most noble ladies here had a somewhat chaotic life which lowered their overall appeal. Suddenly, the doors at the end of the hall opened, and the old king himself made his grand entrance. Everyone immediately rose from their seats and bowed deeply as he passed by. Once the king had taken his seat, he stood up to address the assembly. My dear subjects and esteemed nobles, I welcome you to this banquet in honor of your loyalty and service to the empire. The king addressed the assembly, drawing their attention to the pressing matter at hand. As many of you are well aware, our empire is in dire need of magic crystals, which are the primary material for most magical items and the most valuable resource for magicians. He then informed them that a small magic crystal mine had recently been discovered nearby the kingdom, and despite being within their territory, the neighboring kingdom had refused to relinquish it. The kingdom sent a negotiator and it had been proven unsuccessful, leaving them with the difficult choice of either accepting the neighboring kingdom's terms or using force to obtain the mine. The king then hesitated before delivering some troubling news. Moreover, our scouts have reported that the neighboring kingdom has been amassing troops on our border and making aggressive moves towards our territory. He then turned to face the nobles gathered before him. I implore you, my trusted advisors and courageous warriors, to assist us in this crisis. Your devotion to the kingdom will be highly appreciated and rewarded. He paused for a moment before continuing. I understand that this conflict may be risky, but I assure you that the rewards will be worth it. For those who participate in the war effort, I offer generous grants of land, titles, and magic crystals. Your bravery and loyalty will not go unrecognized. As Maximus sat silently among the nobles, his mind raced with thoughts of the potential dangers that came with joining a war. He was determined to keep himself and his family safe, so he refrained from expressing his opinions and attracting attention. Meanwhile, other nobles with lower ranks were eager to join the army and take advantage of the promised rewards. While some of the nobles listened carefully to the king's speech, others were already busy strategizing and calculating the size of their armies. Eventually, the king concluded his address, and the banquet resumed, but the tense atmosphere lingered among the guests as they grappled with the possibility of war. Maximus quietly slipped out of the banquet hall. His promise to Lord Marcus was already behind his mind. intending to just send an escort and letter for the negotiation. Without saying goodbye to anyone, he made his way to his private chambers and hastily gathered his belongings, accompanied by his escort guards. As they made their way back to his territory, the group rode in silence, the only sound coming from the horses' hooves and the rustling of the wind. Maximus had always been a peaceful man. Despite his strength, he never felt a strong inclination toward warfare. He had already planned that he would only marry wives and gave birth to children and not participate in any conflict until he was somewhat invincible in an area. Ultimately, he decided to stay neutral and avoid getting involved in the war, but focused on maintaining the stability and prosperity of his lands, using his system to get what he needed. Though some criticized him for not taking up arms and being cowardly, he knew in his heart that he didn't need unnecessary danger to become strong. Chapter 8: Fire and Ice Cannon. A week later, Maximus rode his carriage through the gates of his city, accompanied by his escort guards and the twins, Livia and Luna. The reputation of the twin sisters, known as twin stars because of their potential, once reverberates throughout the kingdom. They were trained from a young age by their father, a Tier 4 Sky Knight, and honed their skills through years of intense training and combat. But even the greatest of stories can take a sudden and unexpected turn. For the twin sisters, their tale began with tragedy. Their father, a Sky Knight, perished on a mission in a far-off land, leaving them to carry on his legacy. Their once impeccable beauty and reputation were targeted by those with malicious intent. Whispers spread of a tyrant wanting to take them as his own. Filled with fury, the twins set to assassinate this tyrant to deter others. Although they were successful, the battle exhausted their strength and were eventually caught. The twin, knowing their beauty is a disaster, disfigured themselves until no one was willing to buy them as a slave. Maximus dismounted from his carriage and made his way towards his estate. His wives had gathered to welcome him. They were taken aback to see him accompanied by two unfamiliar women. Maximus signaled for the maids to take the two girls to their chambers to freshen up. He then attended to his escort guards. That evening they all sat down over a cup of tea. "So, Maximus, how did you come to meet these two beauties?" asked his first wife, Erica. With a smile on his face, Maximus recounted the story of how he met the two. "I see," said his second wife, Hazel. "And you have decided to take them as your wives?" His wives looked at them with interest. Livia and Luna were both lovely, despite the scar on their face that already showed a trace of fading. "Well, if they make you happy, then we are happy for you," said Erica, smiling warmly. Maximus thanked them and turned to Livia and Luna. "You two will be staying with us from now on. Be sure to tell me everything you need." Livia and Luna bowed respectfully, their back was straight and their eyes were upright. "Thank you, Lord Maximus. We are honored to be in your service," said Livia. Maximus smiled and patted their heads. "It will be a long way from now on. But before that..." Maximus proceeds to take out the slave contract, a magical document that could bind and control the soul of those who signed it. However, instead of using it to control the two, he tore the contract to pieces, freeing them completely from any kind of control. His wives were initially taken aback by this, as such an action could potentially harm them if the slave were to get out of control. However, they quickly regained their composure. Although the two girls have the strength of Tier 1 knights, but due to malnutrition and lack of practice, they were powerless to cause any harm. Maximus noticed their surprise, but he was confident in his own strength and knew that he could react if there was any danger. His strength was already incomparable before he transmigrated, and he looked at his system panel to confirm it. User, Maximus Shadowcrest. Strength, Tier 1 Official Mage Level 9, 6, 500/256,000. Potential, Rank 3 Rare, 751/1000. Meditation, Chap 2 Celestial Consciousness. Wife 2. Hazel. Strength, Apprentice Mage LVL 9. Potential, Common. Meditation, Chap 1 Elemental Breath. GP, 1 *GP Gold Point per day. Erica Augustine. Strength, Apprentice Mage LVL 9. Potential, Common. Meditation, Chap 1 Elemental Breath. GPD, 1. Children, Lily 1p/day. Liam 1p/day. Gold, 4,320. Mo. A few days later, Maximus decided to have a brief wedding ceremony with Livia and Luna, with only his closest family and friends in attendance. The ceremony took place in the courtyard of his estate. Maximus was dressed in his finest clothes, while Livia and Luna, wearing elegant white dresses, stood beside him. The ceremony was short but sweet, and soon, Maximus and the twin sister were officially wed. Maximus' wives approached the newlyweds and congratulated them, welcoming them into the family. As the festivities came to an end, Maximus wasted no time in preparing his city for the incoming war. He knew that the wall of the city was the first line of defense, and it needed to be strengthened as much as possible. He browsed the system mall and found various types of city wall weapons with different rune systems. Arcane Barrier, Tier 1, an energy shield of magic that surrounds the city walls, repelling any incoming projectiles or spells. Price 1,000 per kilometer. Spectral Cannons, Tier 1, these cannons fire ghostly energy bolts that can pass through solid objects and barriers, striking enemies from unexpected angles. Price 10. Golem Guards, Tier 1, these towering stone constructs are animated by powerful enchantments, defending the city walls with their massive fists and body. Price 10. Flame Barriers, Tier 1, a wall of intense heat surrounds the city that you can on and off, burning away any projectiles or enemies that come too close. Price 500 per kilometer. Ice Cannon, Tier 0, this cannon fires a blast of freezing air, creating a barrier of ice that can stop enemies in their tracks. Price 1. Flame Cannon, Tier 0, this cannon unleashes a burst of fire, burning everything in its path. It's especially effective against enemy siege engines and fortifications. Price 1. Looking at the list of items and his budget, he decided to purchase 500 flame cannons and 500 ice cannons, each with 250 cannons mounted for every wall. As for the barrier, he crossed that item for now as it was too expensive. Maximus personally oversaw the installation of the cannons, checking each one to ensure they were properly installed and functioning correctly. With the last cannon mounted, he stepped back and surveyed the fortified city wall with satisfaction. He knew that the newly installed weapons would provide a powerful defense, and he was confident that any army that dared to besiege the city would be crushed to a pulp. After that, Maximus planned to expand his current army to 1,000 men, enough to defend his city in case the neighboring kingdom invaded them. Upon arriving at the newly built city hall, he called upon his trusted military advisors and strategists to devise a plan to increase their army's size. As Maximus took his seat, he wasted no time getting to the point. You are all aware of the impending war that our neighboring empire plans to launch, due to the recent discovery of a magic crystal mine near the border of the kingdom. Maximus paused for a moment before continuing. Although I have no intention of joining the war, I fear that our current army may not be enough to defend ourselves in the event of an invasion. General Smith responded, "My lord, we already know and have already initiated recruitment. However, training and equipping new soldiers take time." Maximus pondered for a moment before replying, "I understand. You may allocate funds from the city budget to expedite the expansion of the army." "How many soldiers do we have so far?" General Johnson, who was standing beside General Smith, answered, "We have approximately 500 soldiers, my lord." Maximus nodded in approval and said, "That's a good start, but you need to start the recruitment process, as I need at least 1,000 soldiers ready in a few months." After extensive deliberation, they concluded that recruiting from neighboring cities and villages would be an effective strategy. To hasten the recruitment, they promised a large income and bonuses to the new recruits. Maximus established recruitment stations throughout his territory, and soon, people from all walks of life were enlisting in the army. Chapter 9, Expanding the Farm. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, the war between the two neighboring empires over the magic crystal mine on the border raged on. The once beautiful landscapes were now ravaged by constant fighting. The common people were caught in the middle, suffering the consequences of the war. Maximus had wisely chosen not to join the war. As a result, his city was still running smoothly and thriving. The neighboring cities and villages, however, were not so fortunate. Their nobles had overdrafted their city's potential to fund the war effort, leading to many resistances and the common people suffering from a lack of food and grain. It was a tragic sight to behold. Refugees from these war-torn areas began to pour into Maximus' city in droves, hoping to find a new home and a chance at survival. The city was not prepared for such an influx of people, and soon enough food in their granary was not enough to feed everyone. Fortunately, with the Maximus system, food is not that big of a problem. He bought about 50 tons of potatoes, squash, and corn, which is more than enough for a day. Sun potatoes, small, flavorful potatoes with a slightly crunchy texture, said to absorb starlight to quickly grow even at night. 10-ton, price 1. Sun squash, a type of squash with a sunny, yellow exterior and a sweet, nutty flavor. It's a common ingredient in many dishes and is often roasted or sautéed. Copyright Ed with herbs and spices. 10 ton price 1. Fiery corn, a variety of corn that is roasted over an open flame, giving it a smoky, charred flavor. It's popular street food in many cities and can be eaten on the cob or off. 10 ton price 1. The once clean and beautiful streets were now littered with refugees that live on the streets with makeshift sheds out of whatever materials they could find. As time passed, the situation became increasingly dire. Although with daily input of 40 gold points, it was still somewhat manageable. It couldn't continue like this since there were still many things he needed to buy. He had to find a way to turn the city's negative income into a positive one. Maximus called a meeting of his advisors and began the discussion. We need to find a way to increase agricultural production to meet the demands of the influx of refugees. We need more food, and we need it fast. His advisors were quick to respond. We could expand the farming area, but we don't have much fertile land left. The barren land in our territory can't grow food, said one advisor. Maximus smiled as he remembered his system. I may have a solution to this problem. He furrowed his brow and pretended to think as he quickly accessed his system mall for a solution. Crystal Bloom, Tier 1, a crystal that, when melts in the earth, radiates magical energy in a radius of 100 meters, that causes flowers and trees to grow. Price 10. Nature's Touch, Tier 2, a spell that can be cast on barren land, bringing it to life and transforming it into a fertile paradise. Price 2,000. Spring of Life, Tier 3, a magical well that, when its water is poured onto barren land, transforms it into a lush garden. Price 20,000. Miracle Mud, a special mud that, when spread over dry soil, brings new life and fertility to the land. 1 ton price 1. Enchanted Hoe, a farming tool that, when used on barren soil, causes it to become fertile and productive. Price 1. After some consideration, he chose Crystal Bloom as it can be easily utilized. The other options were either not applicable at the moment, too costly, or too noticeable when used. After a while, Maximus pulled out a solid crystal from his storage ring. He then proceeded to explain the function and usage of the crystal to his advisors and officials. Maximus's advisors were amazed and couldn't contain their excitement as they exclaimed, "Incredible! This could solve our problem and possibly change the situation of our territory." One of his advisors quickly asked, "My lord, may I ask where you got this and how many crystals you have?" "I have enough for about 300 hectares of land. As for where it came from, you don't need to know," Maximus concluded. "With these, we can expand our arable land." His advisors added, impressed by Maximus's foresight and resourcefulness. He continued, "However, this is crystal quite expensive and hard to produce, so I warn you not to spread the news as it could get us killed if known by the wrong person." "How about the refugees? How do we settle them?" An advisor spoke up, "The refugees could work in the farms after we cure the land with the fertilizing solution provided by our Lord. We can base their contribution on the yield of their farms. The one who farms with the highest yield can have more land to work with." Maximus nodded in agreement, impressed by the idea. They continued to discuss the details of the plan, knowing that it would take a lot of work but that it was necessary for their survival. 8 months passed, and the once barren land was producing excess food more than what they needed. The refugee was happy, and some of them were in the new houses that had been added to accommodate the influx of refugees. Meanwhile, the workers were busy constructing the new buildings and infrastructure, bragging to their co-workers about their daily lives. Some of them talked about how their lives had improved since they arrived in the city, and how grateful they were for the opportunities. As the new houses were being completed, the refugees eagerly awaited their turn to move in, lining up to receive their new keys. The city had set up a food stand for the workers where they could enjoy a sumptuous lunch compared to the meager meals they were used to, adding to the feeling of gratitude and satisfaction. The situation quickly spread to the surrounding lands as more and more refugees came to take refuge in their city, drawn by the prospect of a better life. They were welcomed with open arms and given work opportunities, contributing to the growth of the city and the prosperity of its people. Meanwhile, in Maximus' castle, his first wife Erica gave birth to their son named Max. Weeks later, his second wife Hazel also gave birth to a son named Nathan. The two sisters, Luna and Livia, were also pregnant, adding to the growing population of the city. Name, Max Shadowcrest. Strength, Tier 0. Potential, Uncommon. Name, Nathan Shadowcrest. Strength, Tier 0. Potential, Uncommon. Maximus himself was also making progress as his strength finally broke through Tier 2 Great Mage. He looked at his data panel with satisfaction, noting the growth of his potential to rank 4 Legendary. User Maximus Shadowcrest. Strength, Tier 2 Great Mage Level 1, 10, 000/1, 000/000. Potential, Rank 4 Legendary 3/10, 000. Meditation Method, Chap 3 Celestial Consciousness. Wife 4. Hazel. Strength, Official Mage Level 2. Potential, Common. Meditation, Chap 2 Elemental Breath. GP, 10 *GPD Gold Point per day. Erica Augustine. Strength, Official Mage Level 2. Potential, Common. Meditation, Chap 2 Elemental Breath. GP, 10. Livia Silvermane. Strength, Official Knight Level 8. Potential, Common. Meditation, Chap 2 Moonlit Serenade. GP, 10. Luna Silvermane. Strength, Official Knight Level 8. Potential, Common. Meditation, Chap 2 Moonlit Serenade. GP, 10. Moonlit Serenade, a cultivation exercise that harnesses the power of the moon to enhance speed and agility. Female knights who practice this technique are known for their graceful movements and swift strikes. Chap 2, Price 100. Children, Lily 1p/day. Liam 1p/day. Max -1p/day. Nathan 1p/day. Gold, 13,125. Mo. Chapter 10 The Death of Crown Prince. Magic crystals are the most valuable resources that you can get. They are often used to power magical devices, enchant items, and enhance the abilities of mages and other magic users. When used to power devices, magic crystals can provide a nearly limitless source of energy. They can be used to power everything from simple light sources to complex magical machines. The crystals themselves can vary in size, shape, and color, with some being small enough to fit in the palm of a hand and others being the size of boulders. Overall, magic crystals are a versatile and powerful resource, with a wide range of uses and applications. And thus, the small magic crystal mine held immense strategic value for both kingdoms, serving as a crucial resource and the most valuable currency on the continent, surpassing even gold. Control of the mine would mean significant strength and advantage for the kingdom that possessed it, hence the intense and fierce fighting by both sides to gain control. The conflict over the mine had been ongoing for more than a year, with both factions experiencing significant casualties. The opposing Kingdom of Jade had deployed their trump card, a Sky Knight, to launch an offensive against the mine, and the Fairy Kingdom had responded by also dispatching a Sky Knight, Shadow, to defend it. As the battle escalated to a climax, a burst of shockwave the entire area, followed by a deafening explosion that reverberated through the valley. Magnus Arinder, the king of the Fairy Kingdom, a Tier 4 Sky Knight, joined the battle, teaming up with Shadow to besiege the enemy knight. After a few bouts, the enemy Sky Knight was eliminated. Realizing that they were on the verge of defeat, the Jade Kingdom surrendered and agreed to relinquish control of the mine. As part of the peace agreement, the kingdom also agreed to provide war compensation to the Fairy Kingdom, including gold, additional land, and other valuable resources. The war had been long and grueling, but the death of a Tier 4 Sky Knight, one of the strongest protectors of the kingdom, was a turning point that led to the eventual end of the conflict. Magnus Arinder, the king of the Fairy Kingdom, sat at his desk, perusing reports and documents concerning the recent war. His prime minister, a seasoned statesman, stood before him, waiting patiently for his attention. "Your Majesty," the prime minister began, "I have compiled a list of individuals who made significant contributions to the war effort." Magnus nodded. "Please, let me see the list." The prime minister handed over a parchment listing the names of commanders, mages, and knights who had distinguished themselves in battle. As he read through the list, he nodded in agreement at the bravery of his people. "I pledge to grant them land and titles for their contributions," the king stated. "Ensure that the rewards are distributed accordingly." "By your command, Your Majesty," the prime minister replied. As the two continued to discuss and plan the distribution of benefits and rewards to those who contributed to the war effort, they were interrupted by a sudden commotion outside. A guard burst into the room, his face pale and his breath ragged. "The crown prince is dead," the guard gasped. The king, Magnus, stood up from his throne, shocked. "What happened? How could this be?" The guard continued, "It seems that he was the victim of a conspiracy by the cultists. He was poisoned, leading to his death." Magnus was consumed with grief and anger. Who did this? I want to know who is responsible for my son's death. The guard promised to investigate, and as he left to carry out his orders, the Prime Minister spoke up. Your Majesty, we should also be wary of the cultists. They have grown more powerful in recent years, and they may be a greater threat than we realize. Magnus nodded in agreement. Yes, we cannot underestimate them. We must root out their influence as soon as possible. At that moment, a figure emerged from the shadows in the corner of the room. It was one of the Emperor's trusted advisors, Shadow. Your Majesty, Shadow said, his voice low and conspiratorial. I have been keeping an eye on the cultists. I have reason to believe that they are working with some of the most powerful nobles in the kingdom. Magnus' eyes narrowed. Who are they? Tell me their names. The Shadow hesitated for a moment before answering. I cannot say for certain, Your Majesty. But I have heard rumors about Duke Charles and his alliance being seen with the cultists. Magnus' face twisted in anger. Charles? That traitor? I knew I should never have trusted him. The Prime Minister spoke up, his voice measured and calm. Your Majesty, we must be careful not to act hastily. We must not startle the snake and gather more information. Magnus nodded, his face still red with rage. You're right. But I will not rest until I find out who is behind my son's death. With that, he slumped back onto his throne, exhausted from the emotional outburst and the toll it had taken on his aging body.